Gracias. Bueno, si Germán es...
Okay, thank you. So if Herman was nervous, I could say exactly the same. So, decolonizing the museum. The Museum of Antioquia is an institution of 136 years. It's the second year. It's the second oldest museum of the country. It's located in the heart of the city. It's in a complex center where a great portion of entrepreneurship and companies coexist with illegal activities and a great quantity of informal workers that show the inequality that still persists in Medellin, despite of its great success and transformation that the city has had in the last decades. Located in located or situated in this context and conscious of the colonial inheritance that we have as an inheritance in our institution, and with the objective of giving a critical look to this inheritance, we must realize that this is an inheritance that we cannot take a part of this colonial element with trying to investigate how we can unify historical narratives that will look and be in function of revising our own history and our own context. Among this, we are asking ourselves how can we make of the museum this colonial device, transform it in a space that will, of course, giving their body to this historical moment, talking about the body. And of course, looking which is the role of the museum in this context of today. So one of the paths that we found is revising the non-hegemonical singularities, which means the presence or absence, perhaps, of certain social groups that have not been represented, that have been omitted, or have been represented in a stereotyped manner within the collections of the museums and specifically in the Museum of Antioquia. One of these examples, or one of the groups that have been historically minimized and excluded, are the women. In 2013, we made the exposition that was called Machines of Life, that had as a main objective to revise the position of the woman in the narrative of the collection that the museum has helped to configure. Only one data give us a foot to keep on this line. From more of the 500 artists and authors that we have in our collections, only 82 are women. So the collection of the Museum of Antioquia reflect the grave problem of including the woman just as an object of representation and not as political subjects. So, therefore, we start asking how can women change this narrative of the museum? So we started to work with our neighbors, a group of women that exercise prostitution in the downtown of Medellin, around the museum. And let's remember that that is a profession that has stigmas morally and has been taken out of the political system and the state in general. When we began working with one of them in one of our first projects, they manifested one of their desires, especially her, Luzmeri Giraldo, who told us in a moment that the museum shouldn't be just a place to save sculptures of Botero, but it should save also stories of life of the woman. So we had a huge challenge here, and it was to collect stories of women and their surroundings of the museums, how to incorporate these stories. If well, it wasn't in our collection, at least putting in our schedule, in our daily actions. And this made a change in double sense. First of all, start working with a new language of art, and for this, our best alliances have always been the contemporaneous artistic practices. In second place, an internal transformation of our processes and protocols, which means expanding the traditional languages of arts and start working with arts that were tangible, measurable, and objectual art. This implies a change that makes necessary an institutional performance, which means a mobile museum, a flexible museum, and this gave us an impulse to give the next step of representing, going from the representation to the interpretation. So we agreed that the new problems should be presented in new formats to talk about new realities. An example of this was the project of Nuria Well in the Feria of Flowers, the Fair of Flowers, that was done in the frame of this encounter of arts in Medellin in 2015, where with a collaboration of 5 girls that were victims of sexual exploitations, made uh, made a walk with the people, looking the collections of the museums, showing some art paintings of the sculptor and artist Fernando Otero. With this, of course, with this walk that was designed by her, they started to talk about the story of their own story of exploitation, making a subjective lecture that they made of the images. Bodies that are imaged to bodies that distort the image and that claim to be agents of their own discourse. So we found 2 ways of operating, 2 lines that took us to 2 projects that I want to show to you. One of them, when the museum implicates itself in the story or the history of the woman, and the second, when the woman start interpelling with the museum. So in that first line, we made at the beginning of this year the cabaret performance that is called Nadie sabe quién soy yo, nobody knows who I am, done with the direction of Nadia Granados and with the collaboration of these women that has prostitution, that work in prostitution, that are denominated themselves as warriors of downtown, guerreras del centro. We're going to see a bit in the video.
Este cabaret
So this performance made part of the exposition of 89 nights decolonizing the sexuality that was presented for 3 months every Friday, where we charged, of course, a cost for the entry. And this money was going to pay, of course, to pay these women in the sense that we could guarantee the sustainability of the project and guarantee, of course, an additional income to their daily activity and their daily work, which is for them is very, very bad paid. So it helped them as well to complement their own activities. And in the next line, when women start working or talking about the museum, in this moment we have an open project, which is a program of the work of the month, and it's called the Consentida. And in this time, we wanted to invite this collectiveness of women to make the curing of this art. We select the main work, that is the consentida work, and around this some other works with which they will establish a dialogue. With these women, we made a work of curing to be able to solve the problem of curing, that in this case was the displacement, and as one of the causes or consequences of the conflict, and one of the fundamental causes that shows why each one of them are in the downtown of the city doing the job that they do. Each one of them has their own voice within the exposition, and for those that will be with us in the evening in the reception in the Museum of Antioquia, will be able to meet them. They will be there, of course, giving some guidance to those who want to listen from their own voice, their curing criteria to select the works of the exposition. So I want to make a closure with a quote of Rob Laseca, We do not aspire that the museum can tell us who we were, but it will help us to announce how we will be and in what way we will keep on living together. So the museum is here to debate continuously the forms and the symbolic modes of power, the citizen participation, the idea of collectiveness and commune. Moreover, or while we work with our historical fault, the museum will be here to help us to imagine new ways of convivence, incorporating the conflicts and not giving them the back, just giving the body and helping them. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Carolina. Te han pasado 3 minutos, así que esta noche van a ser 3 tragos para nosotros en el cóctel.
Bueno, otra cosa